Retrospective opening this month, Alistair Sook asks, just how well do we really know this trailblazer?
Roy Lichtenstein produced arguably the most instantly recognisable work in 20th century art. We all know his distinctive comic book paintings, but it took him years to discover his signature style as he struggled to find his artistic voice in post-war America. When Lichtenstein was starting out, New York's art world was completely dominated by the abstract expressionists, people like Jackson Pollock, Mark Rothko, Willem de Kooning. And in a sense, Lichtenstein was a victim of their success because he found it quite hard to emerge from their shadow. He was making paintings that felt perfectly competent, but they weren't really original. They were hardly revolutionary. He was in his late 30s, working as an art teacher, a father of two, and husband to an alcoholic wife. He was as far away from the style that would make him famous as he could possibly be. But then, in 1961, Lichtenstein surprised everyone, including, I reckon, himself, with Look Mickey, an oil painting of a couple of Walt Disney cartoon characters. Here, as if from nowhere, were the hallmarks of his pop style, his signature look. Flat colours, restrained palette, bold outlines, and actually the use of dots as well to mimic mechanically reproduced imagery, the kind of stuff you'd see in pictures, in newspapers and magazines. And by doing that, by imitating the real world, everyday culture, he was bringing reality into the realm of fine art in a way that the abstract expressionists hadn't done before him. For the next 4 years, he entered the most explosive creative period of his life, producing some of his most definitive pieces, including the War series, based on comic books such as All American Men of War, depicting gruff, grim-faced soldiers in combat situations, full of explosions and sound effects. And at the same time, he was drawn to a different series, the Secret Heart series. That was more about romance, the obstacles to relationships before they finally bagged their man. The strips that he isolated, the moments he picked from Secret Heart, always showed women in a quite passive position. They're crying, they're stumbling, they hesitate, they're uncertain, they're unsure of themselves. They're the antithesis of the really certain soldiers, the men in the Men of War comics. It's easy to see Lichtenstein's war and romance series as blank and reserved. What was the point of making big oil paintings of something as throwaway as these comics? There must have been some level of irony. Perhaps Lichtenstein was having a pop at gender stereotypes, the way that they're reinforced in popular culture. But more recently, there's been a suggestion that perhaps there's actually an autobiographical element to these paintings. At the time, Lichtenstein's life was undergoing huge turmoil. He was going through a divorce and he was very angry. And I wonder whether those women are how he wanted the women who'd failed him and didn't behave like that in real life to actually be. It's almost like he was getting his own back. There's a revenge fantasy, a wish fulfillment fantasy. So I just wonder whether, with these famous images that we think are so familiar, which seem to be so removed and so cold and impersonal, whether at heart there's something intensely personal about them. With his paintings gaining great attention, he also attracted criticism. His method of tearing out pictures, assembling them to make a new image, drawing a copy, then projecting it onto a canvas, left him open to accusations of plagiarism from the art world. I think a lot of people, when they first see a Lichtenstein, assume that he's copied something wholesale. But as soon as you start to get a handle on the creative process that went into these images, you realise that that isn't strictly true. He's making these subtle tweaks and adjustments so that he was right when he said in '63, almost as a defence, my work is actually different from comic strips and that every mark really is in a different place, however slight that difference seems to some. This comic dates from the end of 1962, and Lichtenstein had only been painting in his pop style for a year or two. Just at the end of this issue, there's this amazing advert for this contraption. It says, draw any person in 1 minute, no lessons, no talent. I bet if he'd seen this, it would have made him smile. He would have relished this. There's even an example of how you could use this magic art reproducer down towards the bottom. And it says you can copy all cartoons, all comics. How perfect is that? He didn't do many self-portraits, but if he'd wanted to start doing self-portraits early, this would have been the perfect source. Although Lichtenstein is best known for his depictions of all-American culture, he did produce some more unusual works, including one of his very few self-portraits. It's called self-portrait, but what you see in place of his face, there's a mirror and a blank white t-shirt with no logo, and there's even a label stitched into the back of the t-shirt, but there are no words, there are no brand names at all. And it's curious because, of course, traditionally portraits are things which supposedly offer insight into the artist's soul, if you like. But here, there's nothing. It's blank. It's anonymous. In one sense, Lichtenstein's clearly saying, I am a mirror to the culture. But in another sense, I think he's saying something again about style. The really intriguing, paradoxical thing about this painting is that even though all of the objects in it, a t-shirt, the mirror, the blankish background, don't make sense as a person, we know at once that this is by Lichtenstein. The way in which it's been represented is full of identity. This style is reduced to its most essential form in his landscapes, often just strips of coloured dots. It's curious that he's created an aesthetic which allows him to stamp anything. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be a comic strip, could be a tank, could be a landscape, could be a seascape. You still know at once that it's by Lichtenstein. We could define the paradox of his paintings as Lichtenstein's law, when an artist creates an unmistakable style by appearing to vanish into thin air.